Bienvenido a Kaiser Permanente. El doctor ya te puede ver. Verá que aunque eres muy activo, ahora te cansas más rápido de lo normal. Verá que a menudo almuerzas comida rápida.
Próxima ventanilla.
Verá que pones a tu familia primero y tu salud tiende a caer en segundo o tercer lugar. Y claro que verá que tienes el azúcar alto, igual que tu papá. En Kaiser Permanente trabajamos juntos para ver todo lo que tú eres y darte el cuidado que tú mereces. Kaiser Permanente, para todo lo que tú eres.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Welcome back to the Broke Boy Podcast. Today's guest, I actually did not think I'd have. He is the mind behind a music video time machine, a magazine of true tales and inside stories from the golden age of music video. He grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi, and he is the son of a librarian mother and a rocket scientist father. Hell, he even wrote his first short story at the age of 4, a 6-page stapled booklet entitled The Three Mice. And that man I give you is Stephen Pitalo. I hope I said that right.
Hey, dude.
Hello, hello. Just make sure everything is
1 second.
working just fine. Turn this bad boy up.
All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly loud. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
great. Yep. Hey, man, how you doing? You everything okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good now.
Okay. Sound like you had a little emergency thing to deal with, so I hope everything's okay now.
Yeah, but I'm doing good now. Just
Okay.
just a lot going on. Not just obviously that, but just everything. Just life being busy. So.
I hear you, man. I don't know anybody who's like, hey, I got all this free time. I don't know
Thank you for
anybody.
being flexible though, because
Oh, yeah, sure, man.
I've had people where, and also responding to your emails, because I've had people where I tell them, hey, this is going on, we might have to reschedule, and I won't even get to them. I will get to them, but they won't respond till God knows when. And I'm like, well, I kind of need you to answer when I needed you to, or when you had time, and it's already been a couple days, so that's already a little frustrating that you're not answering. It's so.
Yeah, you can't sweat the small stuff, man.
Yeah.
There's so many big things to deal with. You can't, you got to go with the flow. Otherwise, you drive yourself nuts.
Yeah, exactly. But how are you doing though?
I'm doing great. Never better, man. Life's good. I was really interested in your. I know I hate it when people kind of talk like this, but I was interested in your journey, as it were. How, you're broke, and I've been there.
Basically.
And it's like I was saying to you in my email. We started already?
Oh yeah, it's going.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going.
Okay. It's like I emailed you, man. Almost 30 years ago, I moved to New York for a $200 a week job as an intern. And it was a choice I made between that and another job that I had been offered to be the PR manager of a shipbuilding company in Mississippi, on the Mississippi coast, making good money. But I said, no, I've got to go do this, because I knew the future was in New York. So I moved to New York in 1995 and just been rolling on ever since, just trying to make my way, writing, producing, directing, in different ways that I can. And I most recently published this magazine, Music Video Time Machine, and I've been really, really excited about it. And I was really, really pleased at the response I got from people because it's all about music video directors
Mm-hmm.
from the '80s and the '90s, and a few from the '70s, I guess. During that sweet spot of time, when MTV ruled the world. So I put together the last one a while back. It was 84 pages, and now I'm working on the next issue, which is actually even more difficult than the first one because I'm trying to keep the momentum going. But it's something I've been really excited about.
That's great to hear. I mean, with me right now, I mean, I've lived in Nebraska since I've been born. I'm not going to be living here entirely. I mean, I have other plans to go somewhere. But yeah, I moved out of my parents, came here to a town called Lincoln, Nebraska. I don't know if you've heard that.
Is that the capital?
Yep, the capital of Nebraska. The good old Husker Stadium, the UNL, Husker boy. And so it's moving. That's when I got a lot of my, I guess you can say, real life experiences, and that's where the whole name of the Broke Boy podcast came to be. Heck, I was just gonna spell it the normal, just BROKE. I mean, but there was already someone else, and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy that is gonna use someone else's or whatever. So I did QUE, and there was no one else that had that. So I was like, perfect. It's like a fancier way of doing it. So I'm like, perfect. I'll keep it like this. And I didn't even think of doing a podcast because when I first knew about a podcast, I was a freshman in high school, and I said, it's okay. I mean, it's not really interesting until one day I listened to one. Do you know a guy named Logan Paul?
Yes. And you know why? Because I had a 16-year-old son.
No, there you
That's
go.
why I know Logan Paul.
There you go. But
Yeah.
when I heard one of his with Impulsive, his podcast with Jeffree Star, because I know he went from California to Wyoming. I'm like, oh, cool. Being from Western Nebraska, that's amazing to hear. Someone moving to Wyoming, whatever. And I listened and I realized, oh, this ain't bad. And then I kept listening to more. Like, this ain't bad either. And then it just kept progressing. And then I was like, oh, hey, maybe I should. I like talking, so maybe I should start one. And now here I am starting one.
You've gotten past your 50th episode. Is that right?
Yeah,
That was a while back.
I mean, granted, I'm still learning a lot of the niches, a lot of the other stuff. I mean, I'm growing, so a lot of my stuff, I'm just kind of just blabbering, but it's a learning curve. I mean, I have this now, and I still have the mic. It's down. I don't want to really go for it. I started with a cheap $20 mic.
Yeah.
And I'm with this guy, so
it's great. I mean, one of the things that is amazing when you were talking about coming up with the name Broke is that because of the internet, sometimes you'll go, well, I'm sure somebody already thought of this, and you go on and you're like, no, nobody actually thought of that. So, and then all of a sudden you're the guy. So that was, one of the things when I came up with the idea for the magazine and sort of and to have dance parties too in Brooklyn. I was just racking my brain, for something that really made sense. And then, I thought, music video time machine, because I mean, it kind of makes you think for a moment. And obviously you can't go into the future. There's really only one way to go with music videos, you have to go to the past. So it's been really educational for me. I mean, I actually started interviewing music video directors about 10 years ago, not really knowing what I wanted to do with it. I kind of talked about trying to make it into a book. And, when I started interviewing these guys, it turned out this guy knew that guy. And, when I would show up for these interviews, doing as much research as I could, because there wasn't really a lot out there about how a music video was directed back in the 80s. I mean, there's no real DVD extras for that time. I mean, right now there's an electronic press kit or a DVD behind the scenes or an extra audio commentary for everything now. But back then, there was just a bunch of people on the set, making a ZZ Top video, for example. And sometimes somebody took a few pictures, but there was nobody extra there shooting it because, for one thing, they hardly had any money. Those ZZ Top videos from the 80s are all shot on 16 millimeter film. People
Mm-hmm.
don't realize these worldwide sensations came about because of some fairly cheap stuff at the beginning. But then after a while, it becomes a business, and music videos get bigger. And the other thing that I've always found interesting about MTV is, can you think of another channel that people talk about and say, oh yeah, it sucks now, it used to be so great, they don't even play music anymore, stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
can't think of another channel that people are so critical of. you know it's not like people are going, oh, the History Channel used to be great, but now it's terrible. Nobody
Yeah.
talks like that.
It's the History Channel. I mean, new
Yeah.
history comes up. The history that maybe when you were younger, more stuff is coming upon. So now there's more just history stuff, and it's just history. And
Yeah.
like MTV, I know it did start with just a lot of music videos, and then now, I mean, you got ridiculousness with Rob Dyrdek. You have a bunch of stuff that isn't even music
Yeah.
videos anymore,
No, I
and
mean,
like
if you
wow.
notice, yeah, if you notice the logo on MTV now, it used to say music television at the bottom, but
Hmm.
a few years ago, they cut that off. So it says just MTV now,
MTV.
which is a shame because that brand really means something, but it means something because of the legacy of what it began.
Hmm.
And there was nowhere to really watch all these music videos prior to the launch of MTV on August 1st, 1981. And I had talked to the president of MTV at that time, a guy named John Sykes, and he said, they didn't have that many videos. They had somewhere between 500 and 1,000, but I mean, halfway, maybe even less than halfway through the day, they had to start repeating them because they didn't have enough on the very first day.
Hmm.
So it had to gradually grow. It had to, become this entity that people, I want my MTV. That was an ad campaign that they tried because, it was just a part of a package you could get from your cable company.
Hmm.
There was only about, I mean, at the peak, I think you could only get about 30 channels at the very beginning, and
Hmm.
you would get MTV, but you would get a bunch of other channels, like USA and on these other things. Um, and people didn't really understand MTV when it first came out, because if you try to explain it to people, it sounds like it's a it's a channel that has a bunch of commercials on it for songs, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so you're like, wait, I don't understand. But kids got it right away. It's the radio on TV. It's one song after another. It's, 24 hours a day, nothing but this stuff. And so when those little markets across the United States started showing MTV, these teenagers just swarmed on it and were watching it and watching it and watching it. And the record companies noticed that they were selling more records by artists that were on MTV in those markets.
Hmm.
Because let's say you are in let's say Dallas, Texas, and
Hmm.
you're with a record company, you get a report that you've sold 20 or 25 Culture Club albums in Dallas, but they're not on the radio. Then you go, well, how did they find out about it? Well, it's MTV, and that started kind of rolling along. That's how Duran Duran and Bananarama and a lot of these bands. That's how people found out about them, and it was really exciting. And then it was such a huge deal that they talk about the MTV generation. They talk about when MTV ruled the world. It was true. It was this thing that nobody would have expected was actually going to work. But the people over in the UK had already been making all these videos throughout the 70s because you could
Mhm.
show them on these TV shows all over Europe. They all had shows. The United States didn't. There was a couple of places, like there was a thing called Video Jukebox that was on HBO that
Mhm.
would show these things once in a while. And sometimes they would shove one on a variety show or something, and they say, and now Cheap Trick. And it's not, they're not there.
Mhm.
It's a clip of them playing something. So by the time MTV launches, the first day is a majority of English acts because they had already made all these videos over in the UK and distributed them and knew how to make them and how to make them look good. And the US was kind of behind on it. Our
Mhm.
videos still looked, a lot of them were still shot on videotape. A lot of them were just concert pieces, you know, and, eventually we caught up. We caught up pretty quick. People don't realize that MTV was not on the air in New York and LA for another 2 years. It wasn't on until 1983. And so it really had to prove itself in what we call the flyover states, across
Mhm.
across the country. So it was a really exciting time um, for music because also that meant that the charts, the Billboard charts were all being affected not by radio play, but by what was on MTV. And so it was this wild and crazy time when you had, ZZ Top is on, and Michael Jackson, and Whitney Houston, and the Stray Cats, and the Scorpions, and all
Mhm.
these crazy things. The radio now, a lot of the same thing, pretty much. But back
Basically.
then, if you had a top 40 station, you might be playing, Billy Ocean 1 minute, and then you're playing Twisted Sister the next minute. So it was just crazy stuff. And I think that's exciting.
I mean, that how MTV ruled the world back then, and now you can find a music video on YouTube. It's now how many streams you have of on Spotify and Apple. Back then, I know when I was younger. I mean, I'm only 22, but when I was younger, Apple Music and Spotify. I think Spotify was just freshly new, or wasn't even there here yet. And at the time, when I was young, we'd have to forcefully try to find it on YouTube to try to listen to music. We would listen to it on the radio, and I remember my brother and I would get an MP3 and say, "Oh, it's on. Let's record it." Or like a CD, would say, "Oh, hey, we bought the CD, but we don't wanna. We want to take it with us. Let's just put it right on the speaker and let's just record it." And I mean, the music industry has gone from obviously just how it was to now. Okay, who can get the most streams now? Who? It's
Yeah,
not even high production quality of a music video. It's just who gets the most streams.
right. You're
Spotify.
right. I think that also the way people ingest entertainment now is so much different because it's all based on an on-demand idea.
Mm-hmm.
Every movie on demand, every song on demand, you every television show on demand. So when you sit down and you go to watch something, it's not like it was, say, in the early 80s or even the 90s, where you would turn on the television and you could like go from channel to channel and kind of see what was on. And people would, it was called, and I guess it's called that now, appointment television. When I was a little kid, I knew what came on TV every night because that's how it worked. You didn't get to watch whatever you wanted, you watched what was on. You only had maybe three or four channels or whatever at first. So I think, and part of this too, I think affects the youth of today in ways that we won't fully know for years. But when things are on demand, when you get what you want pretty much any time you want, that starts to affect how you think about the world.
Yeah.
And I think you start to get disappointed when the rest of the world doesn't work that way. And I think it's up to parents to, sort of warn their kids that, when you leave the house, it doesn't exactly go your way. There was a writer who's still alive here from New York named Fran Lebowitz, and she wrote something about how if you live in New York, when you step out of your front door and you walk onto the sidewalk, you have to be resigned to the idea that things are just not going to go your way. And that's a hard one to swallow. And I think one of the problems with MTV is that MTV is never going to be what it was
Mm-hmm.
because nothing else is what it was. But I do think that there's a place for music television that could serve, say, my generation, where it does look like it used to do. It's not that hard to have a regular channel that plays nothing but music videos all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they refer to it's so weird, but they refer to that as a lean back experience now, which is you just let it go, you let it play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but it's weird how it has affected uh, movies. Going to the movies is completely different than watching something at home. But there's so many people who that's the choice now for everything. Is like, do I want to leave my house and go somewhere and see a movie? Because and it's some of the choices are so uh, determined by what is important to you. People who are adamant about these things being within their control. I want to be able to stop that movie when I want. I want to be able to turn it on when I want. I want to be able to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, pause it. I want to be able to do something else while I'm there. I want to be able to talk the whole time, things like that. That's very different than going to a theater where first thing, it starts when it starts and it ends when it ends. Two, it's a community experience. It's different than being at home and watching something, say, just with a friend of yours or all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the movies and TV used to be a very different experiences, but because so much on demand has, sort of taken over the movies, people forget that movies are like dreams. You go, the lights go down, these pictures come up that are enormous, bigger than anything in your life, and you watch this thing, and then when it's over, it's like a dream is over, you
Yeah.
know. But that's not how it is when you're at your house and you're watching something. No matter how big your TV is, it's just not the same, you know. I mean, how do you feel about going to the movies versus watching content at home on your screen?
I mean, it feels tremendously different because just like when I was younger, I don't really go to the movies anymore. But when I was younger, I was ready. I'm like, oh, this movie's on. Let's go get the popcorn. Let's go get everything. Go to the bathroom before, because you don't want to go to the bathroom during the movie because you're gonna miss something. And when you think, okay, the movie's just going slow right now, I should be good. You go to the bathroom, come back. People are gonna be laughing their asses off. You're like, what happened? What just happened? And you can't just say, oh well, we'll go we'll try to just like watch it next time, because next time is you gotta go to the movie theaters again. And the problem with my generation is our attention spans are so much lower than they used to be. That's why when how TikTok blew up, it with how just quick with like the attention span, just quick short second videos. That's why it was just like on demand. You don't get the hype of waiting and seeing it for the first time and be like, oh my god, that was such a great movie. It's like, oh, I can watch the movie. I don't like it. Okay, let me move on to the next one. And
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
and
it's
before
crazy.
it's like, oh, like
Yeah.
it's like,
Now you were saying that you just said you don't go to the movies anymore. Why don't you go to the movies anymore?
well, to me, it's not the movie experience. It's just more just like the theater experience. I mean, it's just more to me. There's not much movies that are starting to excite me, uh, and the movies that do, just like how you said, they come out
Yeah.
on like Disney Plus or like HBO Max. I'm like, I could just watch it here, and
Right. Now,
just
Top Gun Maverick. Did you go see that at the movies? Because there
no,
was
but
this
I heard it
whole
was good.
yeah, there was this whole thing where Tom Cruise was making this campaign of you go see it at the movies. It's very different than going. And then when I mean, I went to see it at the movies.
Mhm.
There's a thing at the very beginning, and it's Tom Cruise, and he says, "I want to thank you personally for coming to a movie theater to see this movie." And you're like, "Wow," you know. Uh, and that's something, because I think he wanted to give something extra to people who got their butt out of the house and went and saw this thing. And I uh, I have seen some movies in enormous theaters, and the experience uh, was unforgettable. I went to see Titanic at a movie
Mm.
theater in New York called the Ziegfeld, and it was probably, I don't know, people correct me on how many, but it seemed like it was 1,000 people. It seemed like it was the biggest screen I'd ever seen in my life. And the
Mhm.
Ziegfeld in New York is a famous theater. It's been around for 100 years. Um, and I remember, Titanic being this enormous movie that deserved to be in an enormous theater with a giant crowd, and it all worked perfectly. I went back there years later. They were on the just a few years before they decided to close. They did a
Mhm.
showing of Saturday Night Fever, and there wasn't that many people in the theater, but there was enough that you're watching this thing and you're like, God, this is a movie that is very personal and very big in scope at the same time. So I had never seen it on the big screen. It
Mhm.
went to TV and everything else before uh, I was old enough to see it the first time. So when I saw it in the theater, it felt different. It felt different to see it. So I still try to go to the movies. There's a few specialty cinemas here in Brooklyn that I
Mhm.
really like to go see. I like to go to because they make an effort to find, other movies besides the big blockbusters, some of the more personal ones, and get them, in a theater so you can see them in there, and they'll have, special screenings of this and screenings of that. But it's people who love movies who are doing it, and also when you have places like the Alamo Draft House and these chains that now are doing things to make this experience different. If you go to Alamo Draft House, there's no concession stand. There's tables and seats, and they come and they take your order, and then they bring it to you. Uh, so you can eat there during the movie. You have a little table and everything,
Mhm.
and so they're offering a different sort of experience. And I guess that's what you have to do somewhat, because so many of just regular cinemas, it seems like these multiplexes, I've seen so many of them kind of go away. And I mean, things changed. That's how it is. Um, but I do think that it's a shame that there may be this set of people who grow up and they don't know the difference. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because nobody sort of shows them that there is a difference. Uh, and you know, I luckily I started taking my son to the movies when he was really little,
Mhm.
and it was like a special treat. It was something that was great that we would get to go do, and he still. Every Marvel movie and every huge one, he's like, "Hey, it's not, let's get tickets, opening night and stuff like that." And I'm like, it's amazing that he would want to do that. And there's actually one that he is going to this coming week. They're showing Into the Spider-Verse, but they took out the music, and they're going to show it with an entire orchestra playing the the music of the film live while the movie is going. And it's going to be incredible. And it's another one of these kind of special things that they're doing. But it's at the King's Theater, and it's Into the Spider-Verse with the live orchestra. And it's really exciting that's a choice that people can make now.
I didn't think they'd even think of that live. And
Yeah, I went and saw
wow.
a couple of other movies like that, that they've done here in New York, um, and it was kind of incredible. Um, so I think what people are trying to do is they're trying to get people to give movie theaters, a chance again. Um, but it's a choice. I saw a comedian not that long ago who he came on stage. He goes, "I'd like to thank you all for coming out to see me because it was a choice between me and every movie ever
Yeah.
that you could have stayed home and watched, or any television show of the past 60 years." Like,
Mm.
yeah, I guess that's true. So I think people are acknowledging this platform shift. But what are you going to do? You got to change. You got to have these. You have to have your mind in the present.
Mm-hmm.
There is only now. You know.
Are you afraid where the theater experience in the future won't be there anymore? Like where theaters will start shutting down?
Oh no, I
No.
think that there's enough people who believe in the tradition of it that there will still be movie theaters. I
Mm.
think that will adjust as time goes on and all. But I mean, when television came out in the 50s, people said, "Oh, this is going to ruin the movies. Nobody's going to go to the movies anymore," and that was true. Also, when music videos, became this 24-hour a day thing in the 80s, I remember there being some people saying, "Oh no, no, this is going to ruin touring. Nobody's going to want to go see a band live now." And that's absolutely not true either. There's, people want to go see a band live. I think people, in a weird way, the on-demand platforms make people also realize that there are other things that you can do. I mean, if you thought of the fact that on-demand video in your home is one way to see something, but let's say you go to, here in New York, there's a place called Pier 17 where you can
Mm-hmm.
see a band play, and it's right on the Hudson River, and that's a whole experience
Ooh.
sort of in itself. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of wild. So I think the more options people have, I think the more satisfied they are with the popular culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's when they just start depending completely on one thing that they get kind of a tunnel vision. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's some people who, you know, more and more people are just glued to their phone, and it's unfortunate because uh, that's a tiny piece of existence. It's one of the simple things to understand about it is that it's just sight and sound. That's only two of the five senses. You know, so you're never going to get any more than 2/5 of real life. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm sure there's
Mm-hmm.
others that are like, oh, but it opened up a whole world to me. But did it? Because if you don't go out into the world, it didn't really open a world to you. It opened a screen on your phone to you. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I mean, I don't know where people get their musical tastes from now, where they get their idea. I guess your friend might have a Spotify list, and then he sends it to you, and you see what's on there, and you give it a try, and you might find a band that you really like. Um, that happens. Uh, but it just seems like the internet is just this giant sea of shit. I mean, doesn't it?
I mean, there's
And you
so much just stuff everywhere. You never.
right.
I mean, it's great that there's something for everyone, but then sometimes you're like, well, it destroys what it was, well, not what it was, but it destroys like your real world. Because if you want to, just like with the whole phone thing, like if you want, like I see not just my generation, but a lot of the younger generation, I see them on the phone so much. I'm like, enjoy life. Like I know,
Ugh.
like yeah, I mean yeah, like yes, I'm on the phone too, but when I know, okay, I'm with my girlfriend, I'm at the park, I'm with my family, I put the phone down and I speak to them because one day when you don't have that anymore, you'll realize, oh my God, I don't really have a true core memory of what I missed out or what could have been a memory because I was just on the phone, just scrolling through TikTok. And just like when it comes to like theaters, just musical theaters, live, anything like that, and comedy shows, just anything where people get together and watch a person, watch a band, watch something together. When people have that phone down and the person or band or whoever's performing is doing what they're doing, you just feel a connection. You're there to smile. You're there to, you're there to have some fun and not just on the phone. Just okay, let me just take a picture. Yeah, that I'm having fun here. Yeah, I wonder if I'm gonna get any likes. And you're like, because you look back, you're like, I didn't. Yes, you took you took a video or yes, you took a photo that you were there, but were you really there? Or were you just there for your phone to get a taste and not for you to get a taste of why you went? Just like concerts. I'm glad concerts still exist because my girlfriend and I, we went to a Justin Bieber one last year, and I'm like, wow. I mean, I saw a lot of people on their phones, but when it was time for him to sing, a lot of people put it down.
Yep.
A lot still were recording. But I wasn't even on there. I'm like, I'm watching it. I'm enjoying this right now. Because A, I've never been to a concert, but B, I'm enjoying it right now. I'm glad I'm seeing Justin Bieber and not just through a phone, through a screen. Like, oh yeah, that's fun, that's cool. I'm seeing Justin Bieber, but I'm not there to fully experience seeing him on live concert. And I mean, I don't know, it's just.
Well, to your point there, I went to see John Mulaney at Madison Square Garden last year, and they had a phone pouch system where you had to put your phone in a pouch and they would lock it so that you couldn't use it during the show. If you needed to use it, you'd have to go out into the the area that's away from the seats, and you could use it. And it was really interesting to see inside Madison Square Garden as people were getting in their seats and they were talking to each other and doing stuff, all these people who kind of looked like they were a little lost because they just weren't used to having their phone, and their instinct was to do something with their phone, but they end up not doing that. And then, you see people they're sitting in their seat, and then they get up and they sit down and they get up, and they felt really like somebody had taken the power away from them. It was really bizarre. It was one of the weirdest things I think I'd ever seen. And because I am of a much older generation, I had the experience that is different from when, like, say, I'm talking to you. The mobile phone came out and was prevalent after I turned 30, and the smartphone actually much more until I was almost 40. So I had the whole experience of life before the phones, before the internet. I have to answer questions of my son that seem bizarre. Like, he has a smartphone, and he doesn't pick up when it's an unknown number, no caller ID or a phone number that he doesn't recognize. And I said, you realize that when I was a kid, the phone would ring and we never knew who it was. And we would always answer it. He's like, that is crazy. So there's so many strange things to sort of understand. The other one is, he's like, if nobody had a cell phone, and how did anybody know where anybody was when you guys would like go out or something? And I was like, you made plans to meet somewhere, and then if somebody didn't show up, that was just it. They just weren't there, and that was
They're
it.
like, well, if they're dead, they're dead. I just know we're here.
It was like, I guess he blew it up or something like that. And then, and that's the other thing is Monday morning, if you were at school and somebody had a party or something, you had something you were talking about that had happened. Whereas now, everything happens right now, and they tell everybody what's going on right now. And by the time you see somebody, they already know everything that you know. It's wild, you know? But I don't want to come off as somebody that is like, oh, we're so much better back then. There's a lot of things that are a whole lot better now than they used to be. So I think it's just because everything changes, you can't fight a war to try to go backward or now what I do, and I've been able to find this, there are several places on YouTube that, I mean, sometimes they get taken down, but most of the time they don't. You can look up like hours and hours of MTV broadcast as it was broadcast, like in 1983 or 1986. They'll have like these 8 hour chunks of just television, and you can just, you put it up and you just watch it, and that's exactly what it was playing on that date on MTV for that 8 hours, and you can just watch it. And that's the kind of thing that I like to do. I like to see, and because it's somewhat nostalgic for me too, I'll go, oh, I remember that commercial, I remember when this was a big deal when it came out. And, they'll have music news and all this kind of stuff. So you can still have these things, and you can have them, but MTV now, it just, it's a thing that was of its time. And, it just wouldn't work now. People just don't care to receive their music and their music videos and their entertainment in that format anymore. Otherwise, that's how it would be. The entertainment industry is really smart about being able to sell whatever it's going to sell, and if it works, they keep doing it, and if it doesn't, they don't.
Because nowadays, from my age being 22, you talk to people around my age, as I'm not gonna say like the newest generation, but even just, I guess, my generation, and people that know about MTV, they're like, oh yeah, I remember all that. But you go to MTV now, or you even talk to newer generations, like, the hell is that? The hell is MTV? You even talk to people around my age, they'll still say, well, what's MTV? And you go back, or you talk to people in around your generation or even older when it was out. They're like, "Oh, buddy, let me tell you about MTV." Just like when I'm gonna be older with Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel, all those. When I was younger, everyone was on the train. Everyone was watching SpongeBob. Everyone was watching all, like, the Fairly Odd Parents. All of this. Now with how on demand is, people still watch it, but people are like, oh yeah, Nickelodeon, that was old. That's old now. Like, no one watches Nickelodeon anymore. I'm like, I did. I remember when I wouldn't know a new episode came out, because when I'd watch SpongeBob, I was watching an old episode and bam, a new one came out. And now with just everything's on demand, you get notified, hey, the new season of The Last of Us is here. The new episode of The Last of Us is here. Go watch it now. Before, I'm like, you would prayed. You would hope you were on time to watch that new episode. And
right.
It just, and I'm part of it. I miss it, of just that feeling of, ooh, let me sit down. I got my cereal. I got everything. Let me sit down to wait for the new episode to come out. And now it's just like, oh yeah, a new episode of SpongeBob came out. And it's not what it used to be anymore. And even like like bands and artists now, it's not a lot of the new ones, a lot of the popular ones that come out. It's not like how it used to be, where everyone was listening, like the Beatles, the Michael Jackson. Everyone was like, oh my god, this is the artist. Now it's like, okay, they're the hot artists right now because they're famous on TikTok. Let me watch them. Okay, 5 minutes went up. Okay, they're not popular anymore. And
right. And you made a good point about Michael Jackson. I mean, in 1984, everybody was waiting for the Thriller video to come out, and then once it came out, it just blew everybody's mind, and they kept showing it, and everybody was talking about it, and it was a big deal, and it was part of a more a culture that had sort of something in common much more than it seems to do now. One of the great things about this magazine, Music Video Time Machine, that I put together was I was able to talk to some of the music video directors from that time and get some information that hadn't been sort of talked about before. I interviewed John Landis, who directed Michael Jackson's Thriller, and I don't know if you know this, but there is a version of Thriller in 3D that exists. They showed it at I think the Venice Film Festival, and they got a great response. But then COVID happened, and also the Jackson Estate wanted to do something with it. And I would guess that next year, when it's I believe the 40th anniversary, they will probably do something with it. But John Landis, he's talked about Thriller so much. He was so kind to talk to me a little bit more about it and give me some great insight into working with Michael Jackson. And I don't know if you remember the black or white video for that song, but he said that it was a very different Michael than when he worked with him on Thriller. And they called John to come in because several of the other directors had not been able to get Michael to even come to the set. So by the time they get to John, the rumors were that David Fincher and David Lynch had both been hired to do this, and then Michael just would not show up. And so they went back to the guy. They knew that he could get him, to come and do this thing. And he had all these great stories, as did, I talked to, I think we've got about 8 or 9 music video directors in the first one. But also, I was lucky enough to talk to, certain bands who were nice enough to talk to me about those times too, about the music videos then. I mean, we talked to John Oates from Hall & Oates. We talked to Terry Nunn from Berlin. We talked to Karen Woodward from Bananarama. And we talked to Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's. She talked about, being extremely hungover for some of the videos when they were shooting them. And behind the scenes on some of the videos that my generation really embraced and really liked. We go behind the scenes of one called Twilight Zone by a band called Golden Earring, which looks like this crazy spy thriller, but it's really interesting. Golden Earring were a Dutch band, so they hired a Dutch director, and he was nice enough to talk to me about it. Members of the Smithereens, a band from the 90s, talked to me about when they did a video for the soundtrack of a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and Jean-Claude came to the video set and did a part in it and stuff, and they said he was great. The director was talking about acting, and Jean-Claude Van Damme interjects. He goes, "I'm not an actor. I'm a movie star." So little funny, weird stuff like that. So I encourage everybody to go to musicvideotimemachine.com, and you get a link to the magazine. It's totally free. And it's 84 pages of stuff about music videos of the 80s and 90s. One of the guys I talked to was Sam Bayer, who, in a very weird bit of twist of fate, he directed the video for "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for Nirvana, and then he directed the one for "No Rain" by Blind Melon, the one with the bee girl who dresses up in the bee costume. So he had great stories from those shoots. He said that one of the scenes in "Smells Like Teen Spirit," where it's a huge crowd and they're all kind of going crazy, was basically the shoot was over, and somebody came to him and said, "Hey, the kids want to just tear everything down and tear it apart." And he was like, "Yeah, go ahead and do that. That's fine." And then something told him to just flip the camera on and shoot all these kids tearing the place apart. And it's lucky that he did, because there's a big chunk of that in the final version of "Smells Like Teen Spirit's" music video. So, kind of some insight and some, untold stories, some insight into, what it was like on those music video sets. And I had a great time putting this thing together. I hope people will want to go and check it out.
I'll put it in the description of the podcast, so then obviously it'll show it on all of them. And what I do after I finish all this, I make like an introduction of, this is this person and this is what they do, whatever. I'll give you guys this person or whatever. I just make like an introduction, and then so I'll also tell them about your magazine. Again, put it in the description. Same with the YouTube,
Okay.
put it in the description. But I know another question I was gonna ask you of.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what made you come up with the big knuckle sandwich or the knuckle sandwich or whatever it was called?
The
I saw in your bio.
sandwiches.
The knuckle sandwiches, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I saw in your bio. Give me a little
Yeah.
insight on that.
2004, 2005, I was in a punk band called the Knuckle Sandwiches. It was just a friend of mine, Andy, and he was learning the bass, and we started talking about some of the things we hadn't done that we'd really like to do, and so we decided to put together a band. I knew a guy from college who played the guitar, and I was working at an ad agency, and I had a guy that I worked with who turned out to play the drums. And so we got together and we trying to, figure out if there was anything there, and thought it was kind of interesting. We wrote a few songs, and we just found that we really liked doing it. We had no ambitions. We had no real plan or anything like that. We just, figured out we could book a few places and play.
Mm-hmm.
And then we found an old friend of mine from 10 years earlier was booking bands in different clubs. And so he would put us on a lineup with 3 or 4 other bands. And so we ended up playing all these places over the course of like a year and a half. We actually played CBGB's, where the Ramones and Blondie and the Talking Heads all had their start. And so, yeah, it was a whole lot of fun. We had one gig where it was called Classic Albums Live, and you had to pick an album and play it all the way through. And so we decided to do the Ramones' second album, which is called The Ramones Leave Home. And Ramones songs are really short. And so we were able to do the whole thing in 25 minutes or something ridiculous. But and our drummer, who unfortunately recently passed away, told me that really taught him certain ways to play the drums, because if you learn Ramones songs, they're very basic, but they're still it still takes a certain amount of discipline to stay on the 2s and 4s in that specific way of doing it. So in the course of being in the Knuckle Sandwiches, we played a strip club, we played a crawfish festival, we played a private party for a roller derby team, a ladies roller derby team.
I mean, hey.
And we played. And like I said, we played CBGB's. We played Hank's in New Orleans, a great honky tonk dive that always we had dreamed of playing some of these places. Hank's was one of them. And we played a college alumni crawfish boil, and I think it was our second or third gig, and we were so terrible. I have a recording of it. It is just unlistenable. I don't know what we were thinking, but it was just awful. But anyway, after we played the Crawfish Festival in New Jersey, we were just sort of kind of worn out with it, and so we broke up the band. But it was a lot of fun. We did a little EP that I think is still available. Yeah, thanks for asking about it. The Knuckle Sandwiches. I try to keep the legacy alive by talking about it. I'd bore everybody to death talking about the Knuckle Sandwiches. But thank you for asking about it. It was one of the most fun times of my life.
Of course. I mean, hey, it's always good to just skim through, just going through the website, just kind of picking and choosing. Okay, what do I see? And just like I did see, you organized in 2011 Rock for Japan or something like that, or
back in 2011 when they had the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, I was working, and I'm still working for a Japanese corporation, doing public relations, and I called some friends of mine and said, I'd like to do something for, the Fukushima people. It's, one of the worst disasters that's ever befallen a country. And so we got a bunch of bands together and we played at Brooklyn Bowl. We got one of my favorite bands in the whole world, a Japanese girl punk trio called High Teen Boogie. And they're just amazing. And they came and played. It's funny, they showed up probably, I want to say 7 minutes before they were supposed to go on. We were all just sweating, going, "Where are they?" And they were the first band. They were going to be the first band to go on, and they just show up and like, "We're here!" and go on stage, plug stuff in, and we're ready. I swear to God, in less than a minute, they were ready to go, and it was amazing. We're High Tea Boogie, here we go, and just blew the room away. It was fantastic. I was very lucky to have partners on that. Kathy Cervenka of Kathy Land was a big help on that. She also organized the Classic Albums Live that the Knuckle Sandwiches played, so we were able to do that with her help. I encourage everybody to check out Kathy Land and the things that she does in New York City. She's an amazing promoter, an amazing talent. Definitely worth checking her out.
Sounds good. I mean, I'll try to still keep the legacy alive of the knuckle sandwiches.
I appreciate it.
Of course. I might even in the description, like in the title, I might even just say, something about the knuckle sandwiches, or just in the description. Or
I
something.
appreciate it.
I'll think about it. I'll try to do it.
I'll see if I have a legacy T-shirt I can send you.
There you go.
Because the logo is the best part of the band.
I haven't seen it, but I mean, I'll be down to see it when we get the chance.
All right, sounds good, man. I appreciate it.
Thank
All right, well, look, man, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Of course,
and
thank you for wanting to come on.
Oh yeah, I wish you luck with the podcast, and I'll be letting everybody know on my social media to check it out.
Perfect. How did you find me at first? Like, I know I just got an email. I got a Instagram DM from you and some other lady that I'm gonna talk to about later. Right now she's busy, so that'll be later. But how did you find me?
I was just scrolling through some stuff, and I saw the name, and I was like, "Broke with a QUE." That's very interesting. And so I clicked on it and I listened to some of what you're doing, and it's just so sort of loose and free form and very honest. And I was like, hey, let me see if this guy wants to talk to me. So
of course. Like, how'd you it was just on Instagram, you kept just growing around, or where?
No, it was on Apple Podcasts, and I was just kind of scrolling through and seeing who was doing what, and I saw Broke with a QUE and your graphic with the wallet being open, and I was
being
like,
empty.
That's interesting. So yeah,
being
that's
empty.
how I found you.
Man, well, that's actually good. I didn't even think, because how most of the guests, other than, because before, how I found guests was just people I knew, just my friends, people in my circle, until I decided to join Polywork. I got some people. I do have one. I found my first one was a psychic medium, and then it found others. I'm doing her next Tuesday. I mean, let me tell you, I don't know if you've listened to the psychic medium or watched it. It was a little bit interesting when I did her. It was pretty interesting. And then, I mean, I don't know. It's just, I'm glad where I'm progressing with this, because then I also am trying to get my real estate license to become a realtor, and incorporating the podcast to, who knows, maybe get clients, or just on my free time. No, not on my free time, just because since every Sunday a new episode drops, so it's like, well, being a realtor, talk to people, experience, get just keep expanding both my real estate career and the podcasting career, so then I can create a legacy of the broke boy.
That sounds good. That sounds great. Well, I wish you luck, man. Keep it honest, keep it real, and you can't go wrong.
Thank you, and I'll appreciate you for even finding me. I mean, I didn't even have to reach out to you. You found me, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Hey, yeah. All right. Well, take care of yourself, and hope you get out of the broke uh, pocket that you're in right now. Who knows? Maybe things will get so amazing that you have to change it to not broke boy.
Possibly, but I might just stick with my roots. Just know where I came from. So, I mean, hey,
That's awesome.
but us. I mean, who knows? Maybe in the future, might get you on again.
I love to. I'll never shut up about this stuff.
No, it's all good. I mean, I like to have someone, who well, we both talk. We're both able to communicate, and makes it easier for the podcast and just us in general. Because I did have one. I was going to do one with a lady, but we just did not connect. I like some when I'm doing a podcast. I like someone who, I mean, yeah, if they want to keep it professional, they can. But it's like, kind of like relax. We can talk, like, let's talk like friends and not just be serious, because then it's like I don't feel like we're gonna connect well. Because if I want to kind of relax and speak to you, maybe still ask some questions, maybe curse here and there, and you're just gonna look at me with a dead face on you being serious, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not gonna work for me. Because and for the podcast, I like to be relaxed. It's like speaking like we're friends, not
Yeah.
like I'm interviewing. I don't want it to seem like an interview. I'm talking to you like a friend, and because then that way I can see, when you're relaxed speaking, I can see real emotions and not just, okay, serious. Ask me these questions. Okay, 30 minutes gone up. Okay, bye. I'm leaving. It's like, no. It's like, no, man. We're talking. I'm not just gonna ask you questions. We're talking.
Yeah, and every new episode needs to have a surprise,
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, there's no suspense. And that's what you need in entertainment. You always need suspense. People need to have a reason to hang on and
Mm-hmm.
watch the rest and listen to the rest. And part of that is, what's going to happen next. And I think, you've got the personality to pull it off. So good
I mean,
luck.
look with mine. I mean, like, I went from a psychic medium. I had a former CPS worker. I had a
Oh, yeah.
I had a business coach, a meditation teacher, a Reiki master. Like, I'm all over the place because I'm willing to listen to anyone and talk to anyone. And because that way, it doesn't feel like, okay, it's only just a certain genre and it's only people from that genre I can either listen or I can only speak to. It's like, I want to listen to everyone. Even if you're going to talk to me about anime and I know nothing of anime, I'll try my best to spark a conversation, to listen, because some people are just like me. They're starting from the ground up. I want to listen to them from when they start from the ground up. So,
Yep. Well, hang in there, man. And hope to get to do it again sometime.
thank you. You have a great rest of your day.
I will.
All
Take care
right.
now.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.